What are the basic functions of a school? And is the Boise School District failing them? We'll answer that, plus Governor Little sends the National Guard to help ICE. Boise is taken off DHS's updated sanctuary city list, and our AG defends you over the spotted owl. This is the Yocal, Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news you need to know in Idaho for the last week. Welcome, glad to have you here with us. Plus, we'll also be looking at a Nampa senator's amendment to protect public lands and answer how you can keep our forest from burning and your home warm at the same time. Sounds like a nice plus plus if you ask me. To get full coverage on any of the stories we're going to go through and more, go to our website at localyocal.substack.com to ensure you're the most informed Idahoan in the room. Now, let's dive into it with our first story. The Boise School District faces another blow this week as parents filed their fourth tort claim in 6 months, seeking damages over sexual abuse allegations. This latest claim involves multiple assaults of a Hillcrest Elementary student by classmates as young as 8 years old in an unsupervised bathroom. The most troubling detail about this? The bathrooms used to be staff supervised, but administrators stopped monitoring it during lunch and recess. When parents discovered the abuse and tried reaching school officials through multiple channels, including the front desk, counselors, teachers, and the district attorney, it took over 24 hours to get a response. Now, this might just seem like one very sad instance, but there have been past ones adding to this, 3 to be precise, totaling about $153 million against the district. All of the past ones connected to Gavin Snow, a special educator assistant who died by suicide in January, as police tried to arrest him on child sexual abuse charges. Snow allegedly used his position to produce child pornography and sexually exploit students at Valley View and Cynthia Mann elementary schools. Now, here's where kind of the alarming bit should come in for parents. The school has 2 fundamental jobs. Ones that when I say it, you probably know what I mean, but they are important to state for this. The first is to protect children. They have some of the more vulnerable. You have the women and children, the vulnerable, right? And the other is to educate them. The Boise School District in this situation seems to have demonstrated it can't even accomplish the first fundamental duty. When administrators removed bathroom supervision and failed to respond promptly to abuse reports, they abandoned one of the core functions that a school has. The district's own policies require staff to file mandatory reports, yet none did so in this latest case. Parents across the Treasure Valley should seriously consider educational alternatives that prioritize their children's safety over progressive policies that have clearly failed or are currently failing in Boise. And you just can't make this up. Our next story, a federal judge delivered great news for Idaho families this week. U.S. District Judge David Nye denied a request to block our state's law requiring sex-exclusive school restrooms. The Sexuality and Gender Alliance at Boise High School has asked the court to stop the enforcement of the law just at their school before classes started. This just makes me chuckle. We just read a news story about the Boise School District having issues with things related to the bathroom. And then they have a group that is suing from them to get rid of these protections in the bathroom. Kind of seems a little bit backwards. Anyway, they argue that the bathroom stalls provide enough privacy and claim the law violates their equal protection rights. The judge didn't agree with that. Judge Nye disagreed. He found that Idaho had a legitimate interest in protecting student privacy and noted that there are, quote, biological differences between men and women. I think we just believed that 2 seconds ago before everything went crazy, and that they deserve privacy protections. The court ruled Idaho's law is, quote, substantially related to the state's legitimate interest in privacy, end quote. The judge rejected claims that stalls eliminate privacy concerns, stating that restrooms serve multiple personal functions beyond just using the facilities. This ruling means our schools can continue maintaining separate restrooms for boys and girls, while the lawsuit moves through federal courts. The law also requires schools to offer single occupancy alternatives for students who prefer them, so look, we're being very inclusive. Attorney General Labrador called this, quote, yet another victory for common sense and the dignity of women and girls, end quote. This follows a March ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that also upheld Idaho's authority to enforce similar privacy protections. You don't want to miss out on learning more about Idaho. Make sure to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss any of our future content like this. And staying in Boise, the home of our governor, or that's a long story, Governor Little has authorized 14 Idaho National Guard soldiers to help immigration and customs enforcement with administrative work through November 15th. That November 15th becomes more important later, so stick with us. The soldiers will handle paperwork and clerical duties, so ICE agents can focus on arrests and deportations, their primary function there. This comes as 20 other states are participating in this effort, with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorizing up to 1,700 National Guard troops nationwide. All participating states, as you can probably guess, have Republican governors, though Vermont's Governor Phil Scott declined to participate. Sad to see him out there. The move comes as ICE faces real challenges, which you may or may not have heard depending on the news you're listening to. The agency reports an 830% increase in assaults on officers this year. And here in our own state, as we've already reported on, ICE arrests jumped from 41 in the first half of 2024 to 368 arrests in the same period this year. And with that comes a dramatic increase in the workload they have to process, which kind of makes sense for this maneuver. As for the cost of this, federal funding covers it under Section 502F of Title 32. Feel like I'm in a courtroom. So Idaho taxpayers won't pay for this operation, following a theme there with Little. This builds on Little's June announcement that Idaho State Police would partner with ICE to transport convicted criminals to detention facilities. The November 15th deadline, coming back to that hint earlier, does suggest some political timing, as governors push to speed up deportations. Might be the inverse thing that happens with left-leaning ones. They want more illegals because it'll help them in the races, and vice versa. When you deport, you moderate things out a little bit towards the Republican. But regardless of politics, enforcing immigration law remains federal law. So it's good to see our state supporting that effort. And on the topic of justice and truth, the Department of Justice fixed a mistake this week by removing Boise from its sanctuary jurisdiction list. The correction ends months of confusion that started back in May when federal officials wrongly labeled our capital city as a sanctuary jurisdiction. You may remember that. When DHS first published its massive list of more than 500 sanctuary cities in May, Boise appeared alongside places like Los Angeles and Chicago, which I don't think I need to be a brainiac to tell you we aren't those places. The designation sparked immediate pushback from Mayor Lauren McLean, who contacted federal officials to clarify that, quote, Boise is not a sanctuary city, end quote. Very concise. She pointed out that the city doesn't control Ada County jails and follows all federal immigration requirements. Follows, that's to be talked about later. The original list faced sharp criticism nationwide from mayors and sheriffs who questioned how DHS compiled it. Canyon County Sheriff Kieran Donahue, who leads the National Sheriff's Association, called the process lacking in transparency and demanded its removal. DHS pulled down the entire list within days of its posting. The new updated list, released Tuesday, includes only 36 jurisdictions, compared to the original 500-plus one. States that you can probably guess, like California, New York, and Washington, remain, along with cities including Chicago, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia. But Boise is no longer on that list. It's good that federal officials corrected this error quickly when presented with facts. However, some folks remain cautious about whether Boise's progressive leadership truly supports robust immigration enforcement. We shouldn't spread rumors because that's not a good thing and the good book doesn't recommend it. Healthy skepticism makes sense given the city's track record on other liberal policies, namely a flagpole you may remember. The federal government says it will help jurisdictions eliminate sanctuary policies and update lists as conditions change. If you enjoyed that story, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe/follow button. It helps us stay connected with you and reach more folks who love Idaho just like yourself. Speaking of states and going out into the environment, particularly with the spotted owl here, Attorney General Labrador joined 23 states last week and challenging new banking rules that put environmental goals ahead of people. The Science-Based Targets Initiative, science-based target being a capitalized word, released standards in July that force financial institutions to stop funding fossil fuel projects. Iowa's Attorney General led the effort, and Labrador signed on, demanding answers about these, quote, net zero carbon rules. The standards require banks to cut off lending for oil, gas, and coal projects, while limiting investments that pose, quote, deforestation risks, end quote. If deforestation means I'm going to cut some wood and put it in my stove to warm myself and also take care of the environment, then, call me a deforester. We'll also get into that a little later. These attorney generals argue that the rule violates antitrust laws and creates illegal boycotts that harm competition. More troubling, though, they restrict access to affordable energy, maybe that wood that I just mentioned, and food production that families depend on, especially here in Idaho. And speaking of Idaho, for our part, we've already taken steps to protect against this kind of pressure. We've passed House Bill 191 in 2023, which stops the state from using environmental criteria when we evaluate contracts. A good win there. This multi-state challenge sends a clear message. Idaho won't let outside organizations dictate how our citizens access energy or economic opportunities. We're defending against coordinated campaigns that put creation before human flourishing. Idahoans deserve leaders who fight for prosperity, not the spotted owls. And speaking of where the spotted owls usually are, which is out in the wilderness, the week-long manhunt that gripped Montana has finally ended. Michael Paul Brown, the 45-year-old man who killed 4 people at the Owl Bar. I did not plan that at all, to have Owl Bar. Sorry, forgive me. In Anaconda on August 1st, was arrested Friday afternoon near the ranch bar south of Highway 1. More than 30 local, state, and federal agencies searched 22 square miles of forest land over 8 days. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte announced the arrest on social media, praising the incredible response from officers across the state. The search involved National Guard helicopter teams that flew nearly 20 hours of operations. For those that haven't been following the story, Brown, an Army veteran who served in Iraq from 2004 to 2005, lived next door to the Owl Bar and was a regular customer. His family told authorities he had struggled with mental health issues since his military service. After the shooting, he stole a pickup truck loaded with camping equipment before disappearing into the wilderness. The arrest brings relief to the areas on both sides of the Idaho-Montana border. Brown remains in custody at the Butte Silver Bow Detention Center, while authorities work to determine his motive for the tragic shooting that claimed 4 innocent lives. And speaking of the great outdoors and not related to criminals actually protecting it, our public lands may be getting some major protections, or restrictions depending on how you look at it, thanks to Nampa Senator Ben Adams. He's planning to introduce a constitutional amendment when the legislature meets in January that would permanently block the sale of any future federal land transfers to our state. As for how this would work, well, our current 2.5 million acres of state endowment land would stay under the existing rules we have. Any new public lands we might get from the federal government would go into a special trust that can never be sold. Adams says this new trust would focus on recreation, timber harvest, and grazing instead of just making the most amount of money possible. This comes after Utah Senator Mike Lee proposed selling millions of acres of public land, including here in Idaho. That idea, as you probably remember, didn't sit well with our congressional delegation, or with you, with 96% of Idaho voters saying that they believe public lands should stay public. Adams, a retired Marine who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, put it this way: public lands are where he found healing after coming back from deployment. Quote, "On public lands, every man is a king," he says. In conclusion, the amendment needs a 2/3 vote in both chambers of the legislature, and then a simple majority from us voters in November of 2026, if it passes. Adams believes people across party lines will support the amendment for outdoor spaces for future generations of Idaho families. And speaking of something you can do right now to go out in the great outdoors, and as we hinted at earlier, to keep your home nice and toasty warm, the Forest Service just launched an online permit system that makes it much easier for Idaho families to gather firewood from our national forests. Instead of driving to offices or vendors, you can now buy permits online or through your smartphone for the Sawtooth, Boise, and Payette National Forests. As for how this works, the permits cost $6.25 per cord, with 4 cords minimum, so families pay about $25 to start. Which on that cord, and this is a little bit of a side note here, and you can go find this out in our article, a cord is actually an objective measurement. It's not just an eyeballed thing. It's actually recognized. You can go check it out in our article what that exactly looks like. I didn't know that at all. Anyway, each household can buy up to 10 cords, now that you know how large that is, annually. The permits let you collect dead and downfall timber through November 30th, and they come with load tickets and forest maps showing exactly where you can gather wood. Forest Surveyor Casey Johnson explained that people have busy schedules, don't we all? And the Forest Service wants to provide more ways for people to get firewood permits. The agency plans to add more forest product permits to the online system as they improve the program. This change shows government using technology the right way, reduces staff workload, and actually helps Idaho families participate in forest management. When we remove dead wood, we reduce fire hazards and just general fuel for it to burn up, while heating our homes with the most renewable fuel available. Wood. It's almost like it grows on trees. Thank you for listening to the entire Midweek Report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you liked it, make sure to check out our other content on our Substack or social medias that will be linked below. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at Local Yocal Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.